makeup's good. Yep.
All right.
Better?
No, you're looking right at him.
Yeah, look at me.
Okay.
Yeah, look over here.
We're recording. Who gave you permission to have that? Yeah. Little pick-me.
Rolling?
We are rolling.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Okay. You like hip-hop?
Do I like hip-hop? I not only like hip-hop, I not only love hip-hop, I live hip-hop. Hip-hop is a part of me from a youngster to now, until the grays come out. So I am hip-hop. I feel like I grew up in hip-hop, and it's something I breathe every day.
And because you love so much hip-hop, you also started rapping. And according to Rohff, you were rapping in a bus. That's what he told me.
So you did your history on Gil Green. Yeah, man, when I grew up in Miami. So in Miami, from elementary, we grew up in an era called the golden era of hip hop, from mid 80s to early 90s. And it was, everything around us was hip hop, from breakdancing before school started, to battling in the cafeteria, to beatboxing, to writing lyrics, to DJing, to fashion, to vernacular. It was a way of life. And so when I got into middle school, I started writing rhymes, was DJing with some people, some of my friends, and we weren't hustlers, so we didn't have money. So we raised money by selling candy, telling everyone, oh, we're raising money for our band camp, and selling M&Ms and Snickers, and earning a few dollars to get to a studio, because this is when you had to go to a studio. We recorded some music, and one song we actually pressed up independently, put it out there, and it did really well. The music video was played on all the big channels, MTV, BET, The Box, and that was my introduction into the industry on an independent level.
Where can I watch this video?
I don't know if those videos are currently out. We weren't backed by any record label. It was just me. I shot the video while I was in school, and I gave it to my teacher as my project, and then I sent it to MTV, and they loved it, so they played it. And so while I was actually in the university, sitting in my dorm room, we saw a music video come up on BET and MTV, and we couldn't believe it. We were like, yo, we're on national television. And so I don't know if the video is even out there, if you can get it, because we never made $1 off of it. We just put out a music video and pressed records and gave it to DJs, but never had backing of a record label or anything. But it was a great introduction for me, because I started Gil Green, the director, in the music video world.
So the first video you made, it's because of you. Like the first video you made, it was a music video of yourself.
Yeah, the first Gil Green directed music video was actually for a group called Back Live, which I was a part of. The song was called 1,000 MCs, and it featured yours truly, Gil Green, on the mic and behind the camera.
And that leads to what, like after this, because you're on BET, you're on MTV, then you got like people calling you to work with you?
No, it would have been nice if it went like that. But really it was just hustling on video sets, and I was what you call the do-boy. So on a music video set, you have a production assistant, which is the lowest paid person. And then under that, you have the intern, which is working for free. And under that, you have the do-boy. And I was the do-boy. And the do-boy does anything that anyone needs, wrapping up cables, going to the store to get Gatorade, lockups. The first person to show up, the last person to leave is the do-boy. So I paid my dues, and I was the do-boy for many, many years, hustling, working my way up the ladder from intern to production assistant to second AD, which is assistant director, and all the time just absorbing and learning and loving being on film sets.
And what brings you to the hip hop industry? Because you were studying at the university, films, I guess. But what makes you go into the direction of the hip hop?
Well, like I said earlier, hip hop has always been a huge influence. So even while I was going to school, it was my everyday operation. So if I was going to school during the day, I was DJing at night, making dollars. I was making mixed cassette tapes and selling them in the school hallways. When I got to the university level, I was making films, but I was working on video sets and being always around the hip hop world. So obviously, you know, I was fortunate enough to get an education in film, but I would say most of the stuff I learned actually in filmmaking was working on the sets, you know, and being in the school was just another aspect that I was lucky enough to be a part of. But as far as like the collaboration of school and education and my love for hip hop, they all come together in the music video world. And it goes beyond just school. The experience on the set is way beyond what any teacher can teach you in a classroom.
And what was the first big artist, like let's say big name, that trusted you and hired you for that music video?
Yeah, so along the ways, after I was DuBois and worked my way up the ladder, I was a ghost writer. So I was a ghost director, basically. I would say ghost writer. I was coming up with the concepts for established directors. One in particular took me under his wing, and I got to learn from him. And then eventually I got my first opportunity to do a music video for a record label artist. It was Trick Daddy Dollars out of Miami. The video was called America. It was very political, but it was probably with the rawest MC out of Miami, Trick Daddy. And I was young, you know, early 20s, and being on the set with a Miami legend and doing something political, it had everything that Gil Green was about. So I loved it.
Do you reject, like you were talking about politics, hip-hop has changed a lot. Back in the days, you had NWA, you had Public Enemy, and it was about fighting the power, fighting the system. It seems like hip-hop is not about that anymore. It's more, I am the system. So do you think hip-hop has changed and switched that way?
I think like everything in life, there's always change. And with this beautiful thing that we were experiencing in the 80s of hip-hop in its original form, and every artist being different than another artist, and the whole culture that surrounded it definitely has evolved. It's been adapted on the musical level in everything mainstream. Unfortunately, some of the political stuff is still there, but that is not what's necessarily mainstream. You know, mainstream is really about the influence of music and how it influenced other genres. You can hear hip hop in country music, you can hear hip hop in R&B, obviously you can hear it in rock and roll. It's just kind of like that sound, that electric sound of the 808 kick and the drum kick and all of that has really infiltrated music. As far as changing goes, as far as like what I was brought, what really was my introduction into hip hop in the 80s was the social aspect of it. So I was part of the Universal Zulu Nation, which is about always promoting positivity in hip hop. It's also about educating yourself. So there's a whole list of books that if you're in the Universal Zulu Nation, you're suggested to read. Not only that, but as a kid that's growing up listening to Chuck D and Brand Nubian and Poor Righteous Teachers, there was always a positive message, an uplifting message of education that I wasn't getting in school. They wouldn't teach you, none of my teachers taught me to read Malcolm X. But when I listened to Chuck D talking about Malcolm X, I wanted to go get the autobiography and learn about what made him so special, not only to the black community, but to the world. So I feel like that aspect of hip hop was really captured in the late 80s. And you had KRS-Ones and the Chuck Ds and even the NWA on the West Coast, or Ice Cube in particular. I don't know, the message still exists there, and there are some artists that are still pushing it. It's evolved, obviously, as time has evolved. But I feel on the mainstream level, I think what's more popular is this quote-unquote kind of bling-bling world of hip-hop, of the materialism that became popular in the mid-90s with hip-hop.
Do you refuse now music, like to work with artists that, I don't know, like that go too far maybe, or you just, you know what I mean?
That's a great question, because there are obviously a lot of music that I get that I would necessarily not play for my daughters, or isn't necessarily me. But I always looked at myself as a director that it's not about me. I'm just taking what I know to make the artists and their world as defined as possible. So, look, I've done videos for Snoop Dogg. I've never smoked weed in my life. Snoop Dogg, the first thing he wanted to do was give me a big blunt. And with all respect, I refuse Snoop Dogg, which my friends think I'm crazy. Like, yeah, how you not gonna smoke with Snoop Dogg? But for me, it's like, yo, I'm gonna do the best video that represents Snoop's world. It may not be my world. I'm gonna take my film skills and what I've learned and my imagination and creativity, but it's really about representing the artist. So if there's a particular track that I have an issue with, I really kind of separate myself and say, how do I make this exciting for their world as a director? How can I take my craft? Maybe it's a technique, maybe it's a one-shot video, maybe it's a split-screen video, and how do I apply it to make something special for them? Because at the end of the day, I'm not the artist. I'm just one aspect of putting an artist out.
And do you do project on the side for yourself? Like, do you write stuff? Or you just focus on music video?
No, I do my own visual projects. I host an event in Miami every year during Art Basel called Vibes 305. And what I'd like to do is sometimes show video art. So if I have a particular message that I want to get across that represents Gil, I will put together an art piece, something that you would see like in a museum, a visual showcase. And then if you really want to ask me what I'm representing by that, then that represents me 100%.
Can you name a few artists that you collaborated with? Because I've checked your Wikipedia and it's insane. So just can you brag about it a little bit?
I've been blessed to work with some of the best, and not only as co-workers, but as fans. For me, every genre that has influenced me growing up in Miami, I've been able to work with some of the best from it. So Miami locally is like a southern flavor. So in Miami, you have Trick Daddy, Trina, Flo Rida, Rick Ross, DJ Khaled, even like Luke and his groups No Good. So for me, from a Miami perspective, I've worked with the best of that we were bringing up in the culture. But growing up in Miami, I also was influenced by the reggae dance hall culture in Jamaica. I probably spent every summer in Jamaica with friends or family that I grew up with. And that was a big scene in Miami as far as like the sound clashes that was going on. So I was fortunate enough to, my first reggae video was with Sizzla, who's one of my favorite artists. And that led to Buju, Beanie Man, Elephant Man, Wayne Wonder, T.O.K., Shaggy, all the greats in that world as well. And I'm probably missing a few. And then in the hip hop world, I've been blessed to work with everyone from Drake and Lil Wayne, Birdman, 50 Cent, Snoops, Jeezys, Kanye's, like the list goes on, the Diddy's, and all the real heavy hitters in that world. So, you know, I've been in this over 20 years now, probably over 400 music videos, and feeling very blessed every day that I wake up and get to do what I do.
This is your job. This is what you do.
Well, it's my passion first, and luckily it's become my job. So, you know, it's something that I always knew I wanted to do from when I was 15 years old. And, you know, 25 years later, I'm still rocking out with it.
So it's probably because you work with all those artists that Rohff contacted you. And I want to know, like, how did you get in touch with him? Do you remember the first phone call, or like how it worked?
I think I met Rohff at We the Best Studios. Anytime I do a video for Khaled, he calls me over like on the bat line, yo, come over to the studios right away. And he has two different studios, and I think Rohff might have been in there either visiting or working in one of the studios. And so a team that I was with came and introduced me to Rohff and gave me a little background about what he's doing in France and everything. And ultimately, I connected with him right away. And I was in the midst of doing a music video for Khaled, so I was like, yo, if you rep in France like that, yo, you got to come out to this video, I'm So Hood. Is it I'm So Hood?
Welcome to my
I said, if you're representing, edit that out. Yeah, so I saw Rohff and I was like, listen, if you're representing France like that, we need to put you in this video, Welcome to My Hood, that I'm doing with DJ Khaled. Just even for a couple seconds, let's put you in there repping. Because back then it was always about cameos. Every artist was in a cameo of another artist. So Rohff was like, he didn't want to like impose or anything, but you know, he was introduced to the crew and everything, and I pushed him to be in it. And he actually showed up in the music video in Welcome to My Hood. And from that point on, we just always vibed back and forth, and we eventually started working together.
He has a lot of love for you, and like I was talking with him this morning, and we talked a lot about you, and he said you also connected, but not just into the music, but your relationship is kind of a friendship, and like even if you don't really speak the same language, you guys understand more. It's like philosophical or spiritual connection. So is that true? This is the same, you think?
Yeah, Rohff is someone that I would consider like real special to me. I understand his spirit, I understand his story, I understand his love, and I think we connect on that. I think he's one of the few artists that really understands hip-hop in that era. Like we joke about it all the time, but we start bringing back records to see if we know it. Like if he know, yo, you know this record? He'll be like, yo, you know this record? And we challenge each other all the time. But more than that, he's got like a real positive soul. And you know, certain people, you can feel their frequency. I could feel Rohff's frequency when I first met him and understood his story. And it's an African story, you know, an immigration story, something that's very familiar in Miami with the Caribbean and what we have here in Miami and what I was grown up with. So we connect on that level. We understand the world. We wear the same glasses, so we have the same perspective when we see things happen. And there's very few people that I work with that we gel like that on a level, but he's definitely one of them.
It's funny because in France, he's portrayed as a very bad guy.
A very bad guy?
It's
Rohff.
Yeah, Rohff is like, and you can't control him. You can't like, he's too wild. He's like a lion. You know what I mean? You can't put. It's not a pet. It's a lion. It's a real animal. So in France, they don't really like it. So it's funny that you have a different perspective of him.
No, I actually have the same perspective, but my perspective is the bad guy's a good guy. So when hip hop first came out, nobody liked hip hop. CNN was dissing it. No one from mainstream was anyone. If you walked around saying, "Oh, I'm into hip hop," everyone looked at you negatively. Now it's well and accepted. It's fine. But to me, the fact that you're telling me that Rohff is considered the bad guy in France shows to me he's the realest hip hop dude of all of them.
Is it hard to be real in this fake world? When I say fake world, it means this digital world, this industry, and like where the image is so important nowadays.
If you're asking me if it's hard to be real in today's world, I would say if you're real, you're real. There ain't no challenge about it. Like you ain't trying to be something. You're just being yourself. So if you're confident in yourself, like I could sit up here and tell you I never drank liquor, I never smoked weed, but all of the artists I work with smoke liquor and smoke weed and drink liquor. It's because I'm confident with myself. I'm not trying to impress them, right? So it's that same lesson you learn of what peer pressure is to kids in high school. It's like, are you either gonna do something because someone's telling you to do something, or do you believe it yourself? So being real is just being real with yourself. And when I walk into a room, I'm 100% confident. I hang with the hustlers, I hang with the thugs, I hang with the smokers, I hang with the drinkers, but I don't have to be them to represent myself. And that's what I gel about Rohff as well. You know, he just represents himself, and that sincerity comes off, and you can see that.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I work with many artists, and that's the most sincere and direct person. Like he's so straightforward. So when you worked with him and you collaborated, your first music video, what was the first music video you worked with?
The first video I did with Rohff was Quesos Music, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, so excuse me for my English accent, but Quesos Music, and we shot that actually in Cuba.
So this music video is very special. First thing, I want you to explain me the first shot, because it's an amazing shot for me. I love that shot. Can you explain me the shot?
Yeah, so with this music video, we were basically showcasing the beginning of a revolution, right? And we start with Rohff, who is locked up in prison, and outside of him, chaos is happening. But in this one shot, we wanted to pull out of the chaos and into his cell.
So what was you're talking about revolution into the thing. Why did you come up with this idea?
I love revolution because it's against the system, right? And I feel like you always have to have this spirit of checking the system, or else the powers that be that run a system will take advantage of people. So, I mean, obviously, if you're from France, you have one of the best revolutions of them all. But in regards to the revolutionary spirit and hip hop, it's always about an underground movement. So even in that music video, you'll see we have an underground radio station set up. And in Miami, that was the only way we could listen to hip hop growing up. We had what's called pirates radio stations. People would set it up in their basement, in their garage. You get antennas from Radio Shack, from like the stores. And it's a federal crime. Actually, if you get caught with it, it's not even the local police that show up. It's the feds. It's the federal, the U.S. government. The FBI shows up, confiscates your equipment, confiscates all your equipment and records and everything. So this is like the guys I grew up with. We were doing pirate radio stations, like rest in peace DJ Uncle Al, but he was one of the most famous in Miami. And I was privy enough to hang out with Uncle Al as he was doing the radio shows in his garage, right? So that theme always ran in the circle of hip hop, and the fact that we were actually shooting in Cuba, which is another place that represents revolution, right? And obviously there's different viewpoints on how it came out, but just the fact that we were shooting down there was difficult, because at the time, as an American, I wasn't even allowed to travel there. I had to go through Mexico and then sneak through into Cuba to do that music video, which is not such an easy thing to do when you're shooting on film. You're not just carrying back a couple cards. You're carrying back 35 millimeter film. So it was a great experience, and one that I'll always cherish.
But so did you come up with the scenario, or it's with Rohff, you just talk to him and then you're like, okay, this is what's going to happen? That's like the storyboard. Who decided about the storyboard?
So with this music video, and mostly with Rohff, he just gives me the music, but I vibe so well to his music, even though I don't understand the lyrics sometimes, that I already know where he's coming from. So I came up with this concept, and what I'll normally do is write what's called a treatment, a few pages explaining it. Sometimes there's some photo references. Now, as time evolves, there's more and more photo references, but before it just used to be me writing a script or a story. And I gave it to him. I told him, look, come down. I'm going to bring my team down here, and we're going to make a Gil Green music video. Just trust me. Just trust me. And he put that trust in me, and we knocked it out the park. And I also, because my background is music originally, I go into the elements that make that music. So when you're talking about that first shot, I actually got the Pro Tools session from his engineer and took out the elements to build them and create like a score within that first shot. And I remember Rohff told me, and I was really excited about it, because he's just expecting visuals from me, but I actually presented him like a new music mix. And he's like, yo, everyone in France loves how that video starts and the way the music builds in. And for me, that was props. So I'm glad that he appreciated all the detail that goes into it.
Does this video represent him as a person? Since now you know him now, so it was your first experience with him. Do you think that video represent him?
I definitely feel Quesos represents Rohff. I feel like everything we've done represents him. But people are not one-dimensional. So for me, Rohff could be in the hood of Cuba, and he can also be playing tennis, or being, in France or in Cannes, or he can take over a news channel. So people are multi-dimensional. Rohff is as well. But the essence of Rohff, to me, is just sincere. Being sincere and real with people. Nothing what we call fugazi. Or in Miami, we say he's not flogging. Like everything he does is like, this is who he represents. He's not going to wear a hat because everyone else is wearing a hat. He's not going to start drinking 40s because everyone else is drinking 40s. He's true to his religion. He's true to his spirituality, and that's what I love about him.
When I watch this video, I really want to make a revolution. Like I'm serious. I'm so into it all the time.
Yeah.
And especially right now, the world is going crazy. And so, what do you think about the situation, like of what's happening around the world right now in this pandemic?
What's going on right now is a real test for people. They're either going to sit back and be complacent and be like sheep, or they're going to have to start standing up and being vocal. Because if you're not vocal, like I said earlier, the system will take advantage of people. And what I mean on a more detailed level is I feel like there's agendas that are passing on people, and the media is a tool being used to pass those agendas, and we're not getting the full story. So without getting a real full story where you can sit down and have proper conversations and understand everything about stuff, you're just getting what people want you to get, and we're not thinking for ourselves.
I'm asking you this question is because there's not that many artists nowadays that are standing for something, especially now. But back in the days, hip hop was about that, was about standing for your beliefs, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what happened in between?
Oh, I'm going to tell you what happened. Complacency. Complacency will kill people. Meaning this: if you can go on the street and get a cheeseburger for $1, and you come back to your home and you got air conditioning working and you got cable TV on, between the vicious cycle of eating junk food, which makes you tired, which makes you want to watch TV, to watch another ad to go get more junk food, within that vicious cycle, you're just going to be complacent. Your life is okay. Pull away cable TV from people. Pull away air conditioning from people. Pull away food out of your refrigerator. Then you start to see when real action happens. But as long as people are kept in a bubble of complacency, they're not really worried about the next man. I'm good. I got my air conditioning. I got my television. I got my McDonald's. I'm good. After McDonald's, I got Domino's. So to break that, it's going to be either, you really wake up and say, like, we need to come together as people. I need to understand and have compassion and empathy of what's going on outside of my bubble. And for Americans, we're all in this bubble. For the most part, because I've been very fortunate to see third world countries, go to Africa, all over Africa, where if you don't catch a fish in the lake that day or in the ocean, you're not eating dinner that night. It's a different kind of poverty out there. That kind of poverty will make you stand up and revolt. So what I'm saying is there's a certain complacency that I think people have, and you're not, our leaders, meaning our hip hop guys, they're not really, I mean, not all of them, but in the 80s we had leaders. We had someone like KRS-One. When there was violence going on, his main objective was, I'm going to create a song called Self-Destruction. And it was the biggest hip-hop song of them all. And he got every rapper on there together to say, hey, wake up. This violent thing is not the positive way to go. I would say today we have more kids or more rappers talking about shooting them up and glorifying that and losing the message. And unfortunately, our kids are growing up without any education. If they're not getting it from their mom and dad, they're definitely not getting it in school. And if they're depending on music to raise them, they don't have what I had growing up.
Yeah, because me, when I grew up, my father left very early, so it's some artists, including Rohff, they kind of raised me in a way, you know what I mean? Like they teach me value, explaining me a few things, and then I go deeper and look in books or whatever, but hip hop and the rapper, they were like big brother for me. But now, like, I'm just checking the new scene or whatever, what's happening right now, I don't see any figure like we used to.
Yeah, there are, but because hip-hop is so mainstream, those artists, you have to seek and find them. Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, these are positive artists that have a positive message, but they're far and few. There's a lot more There's a lot more out there that I say has a negative presentation. Not saying that violence and crime has not always been around hip hop. That's not what I'm saying. But if these artists back then were talking about, like you talk about KRS-One, he's one of the hardest cats you'll ever meet. He grew up in the shelter. He lost his DJ by gunshot. Like, it doesn't get any harder. But when he talked about it, or when he rapped about it, he wasn't glorifying it. And that's the difference. You have a whole industry that says, show up with this. You know, you got to have a prison record like this. You got to have this amount of thug out look to be like that. And, which is fine, but they're glorifying. So now a kid who's listening to a record like that is not necessarily saying, oh, this guy lived that and now he's telling me not to live that. They're watching him saying, oh, this guy lives that and he's so awesome and famous because of that and I want to be like that. And that's the difference between hip hop in the late 80s and early 90s and now, in my perspective.
How, working with Rohff, from my experience, he has certain rules. It's like he doesn't want to degrade women. I don't know if you can say that. Like,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Like, what's your experience with this?
Well, I think he's true to his religion, and he has a certain ethics and morals and values, and I really respect it. And so, like for instance, if we had a scene and I wanted to get a little bit frisky with the girl, he fell back and he was just like, no, I don't want to disrespect. This is, you know, that's not the place for that. So, you know, when it comes to like ethics and morals, Rohff like is true to it. Like I'm not gonna show up with the stripper and he's gonna be like, yeah, I've been waiting for this scene all day. Like he doesn't live like that lifestyle. His woman is a queen, he respects her, and he lives that on the actual music video set as well. So he's not gonna be wilding out. I've worked with rappers that can't wait for the rap party to happen and take all the models and go party with them afterwards. Rohff's not that kind of guy. No. Rohff is very respectful of everyone.
And same for alcohol. There's no alcohol in the music video. Like.
Yeah. Rohff is true to his Muslim religion. There's no liquor. There's no smoking. And I love that, man, because I'm not Muslim, but I also live that same lifestyle. So also we connect like that as well. And, you know, I always kind of compare Rohff, and I don't know what his relationship is with Akon, but I did a lot of work with Akon, who's also from Africa. And same thing, Muslim brother, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, but he'll make a song called, you know, with T-Pain at the bar. What was that? Bartender. But again, he's just real. This is who he is. And so while Akon has done what he's done around the world, I get that same kind of spiritual vibe from Rohff. So maybe it's just a Muslim spiritual thing that I relate to these guys. But I think it's what being a practicing Muslim teaches people is to have respect for yourself and to follow a code of conduct that says this is how you should conduct yourself. And I think that's what I respect about those artists in particular.
So after Casso's music, that was very good. Congratulations. Like,
I respect.
I remember, like it was 10 years ago. I remember I loved it so much, and I'm happy to see you now. What did you do? What was the next project, and how did you manage to keep working with Rohff?
Yeah, I think the next project he called me to Monaco. Is it Monaco? Yeah. And the name of that video?
Jacques Seller.
Yeah, Jacques Seller. Again, pardon me for my accent. That was just like, sometimes Rohff would just be like, yo, be here next week. I got the crew for you. I just need you to show up. So you'll see, and sometimes, like in Cuba, I was able to bring my crew. Sometimes it's just like he might have a crew already set up and he just wants my creative input or to come in direct. So we'll do some stuff like that. As a director, of course, you want to have your director of photography, your crew to make it happen. But Rohff, he's the only artist that I'll do that with. Where it's just like, yeah, because I love being around him, man. I love the experience, and I'm like, his attitude is always, we'll figure it out, right? Because American artists, they have a big budget from music videos a lot. And in France, I don't know if they sell the same records. Sometimes it's not the same kind of big budget. So, you know, for me, it's always worried about, like, do I have the support that I need? But I just let go with Rohff and be like, yo, we'll make it happen. We'll figure it out. We'll have a good time together, and we'll shoot something fun. Just as long as you can get a camera, we'll make it creative. And so that was one of those videos where we just went out to Monaco, and we brought in a famous model, pretty green eyes, Yvan Marcel. Yeah, and beautiful model. We had a good time out there. That was more of a lifestyle video. And again, we were like, that was where he was living at the time, as far as like that hotel and the cars that he was driving. So this was another aspect that he wanted to showcase.
And he chose you. Why do you think he chose you and he trusts you so much? Because he doesn't trust that many people. What makes you so special for him? Why do you think?
I mean, I feel like, to answer that question, is why anyone trusts me is I always go 100. There's a saying I teach my kids, and hip-hop taught me this saying, Big Daddy Kane, ain't no half-stepping. There's no half-stepping in anything I do. It doesn't matter if the budget is $10 or $500,000. Whatever it is, I'm going 100. So I'm giving the same amount of work and sleepless nights to whatever the project is. And I think Rohff and whoever I've worked with recognize that I go 100 for them. There's no half-stepping. I'm not phoning it in. I'm not just showing up. Like, I'm doing my homework. I'm making sure I don't sleep at night until I know all the shots that we're doing. That's how I live my life. I could never half-step on anything.
You went also in Paris, and something happened. I think it was, do you remember the January 23rd, 2016? Something happened.
Yeah. That was a crazy experience. And this is why I love Rohff. So he calls me and he's like, again, I got the video crew. Just bring your cinematographer, Thomas Marvel, who he's like a medium for us because Thomas speaks French, he speaks Spanish, he speaks English. He's like, come to France, I got this video I want you to do for me. And so I'm listening to the record and I keep hearing this word media. So ultimately I'm like, oh man, we gotta do a video where you take over the media. I'm not sure what he says throughout the other video, through those lyrics, but he told me later that it matched perfectly. But I was like, yo, we gotta do a video where you take over a television station. But I meant it in a way where we would stage it. I didn't realize that he was actually gonna take over a real television station, which we did in the music video. So again, he had his own team working that one. So if it was me, I would have never probably entered into this position. But because he was arranging the production, he was like, it was time for us to shoot the television station. He's like, yeah, I got one, no worries. And then everyone starts like huddling in the alleyway and being like, we gotta wait 20 more minutes before we go in. Like, what do you mean we got it? Let's go, let me set up my lights. He's like, we gotta wait 20 minutes before we go in. We have to go in through the fire escape to get in there. When we get in, we have to like duck through this long hallway to get into the studio. And then we have basically 25 minutes and we need to be out. I'm like, what kind of thing is this? So we do it. We go in there, boom, 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 boom. I'm not realizing that the security guard is sneaking us into a live television station without them even knowing on everyone else's lunch break. So the girl loved Rohff, who was working at the security guard, and I think she might have lost her job over this, but I hope not. Or I think Rohff took care of her after she lost her job. But she basically, as soon as the bosses left, she said for us to come in. We run in, we shoot in 25 minutes. We do this real amazing performance of him knocking over the newscaster. We brought in our models to be the newscaster. He takes over the station, and we're out. And I think just as our last person is leaving, or they check the security cameras, somehow they found out later.
Later?
I believe it's later. I'm not sure. We were out. We made it out.
You made it out?
We made it out.
You had the footage?
We got the footage. I'm like, I'm going back to America. I got the footage. Nobody can do anything to me when I get to America. And we cut this video. I love it. It came out exactly how I wrote it. And then I get the call from Rohff like, yeah, this video can't come out. I'm getting sued by the television station for breaking and entering and shooting a music video in there. But only Rohff would think to like do some hardcore, real shit like that.
Because it was a big deal. Like in France, it's like this intrusion of Rohff, and it was like a year, maybe like a few months after it being sentenced to 5 years of jail. So it was like in between jail time because of the previous story. So in the media, suddenly you thought that he come in, enter like illegally and like start like fighting with people. And that's how they portray it, like the story. But you're telling me you just went and made a music video.
Yeah, I don't think I saw any fights. Maybe on the way out he might have had. I don't know. I didn't see any. We were in. We were out. I don't know if we had permission to be in there. I don't think we did, but I don't know for sure because I wasn't handling production. But what I do know, I found out, is that Europe 1 was the television station, which is equivalent to like CNN for us, and I think we snuck in and we shot a music video at the biggest station for news.
Ghetto.
It's ghetto, and also we were saying fuck you to the media. So we were in their own television station saying, you guys are a bunch of liars, you guys don't tell the whole story, and we're gonna hijack it and create our own media.
That's hip hop.
That's hip hop. It don't get more hip hop than that.
That's the thing. So the media, they like hip hop, but when it's too hip hop, then they don't like it. Why do you think that? Why do you think that the media, they like to have artists, famous artists, whatever, but as soon as it became real hip hop, they're like, oh my God, no, we can't do that anymore.
Well, because they don't want people to think for themselves. As long as you remain in your box and the powers that be aren't threatened. There was a point where hip hop was a real threat. They didn't know how to handle Chuck D and Public Enemy. They didn't know how to handle Ice Cube and NWA. It was a threat. It was a threat. They were trying to ban the records. I lived in Miami. Luther Campbell had a group called 2 Live Crew. And it wasn't so political. It was more about shaking ass and girls being obscene. It's his freedom of speech, though. They tried to shut him down. He went to the U.S. Supreme Court and won. So we come from the spirit of like, yo, you can't stop us. That's hip hop.
So you think money stop it?
Complacency. Complacency. Like, you don't have that hunger. Those artists that were doing it in the late 80s, they weren't necessarily doing it to become a billionaire. They were passionate artists. They probably would do it for free. They were doing this to speak a message and to get a message across.
What would be the message that you would like to send to your kids, to the people, and to the hip hop industry? Like you as an artist, because the director is also an artist. So what would be your message to what, you know what I mean? Make sense for you?
What I always tell my kids and how I live my life is be a leader and never a follower. Think for yourself. Think for yourself. Question everything. If there's a news ad that's telling you to take a vaccine, I'm not saying don't take the vaccine, but learn what's on the other side of that vaccine. So you can make your own decision. Just because Morgan Freeman is telling you to trust him to take a vaccine doesn't mean you got to trust him to take a vaccine. Why do I got to trust you to take a vaccine? Just because a president's saying we need to go to war because there's terror over here. No, I need to understand what's on the other side. So what I'm telling my kids is to think for themselves. When they pour a glass of water, understand why fluoride is even in the water. When you hook up your modem and it says 5G, and you don't really need 5G, understand what is behind 5G. Now, everything I'm saying, you could say, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist, this or that. What I'm saying is just think for yourself. Get all the facts, get all the information. Don't let anyone push you into a box. So be a leader and not a follower. Simple as that. That's what hip-hop was about. There was no formula before hip-hop. Hip-hop now, the music industry of hip-hop is a formulaic thing. It's 3 verses and a chorus after each verse. There was a time when it was 6 verses in hip-hop. You know, or there was no chorus, there was no hooks. So what I'm saying is step away from the formula, be yourself, step out the box, think for yourself. Don't just be a sheep and say because this TV channel's telling me to do this, I need to do that. Go think, go read books, go learn, get educated.
Social media has changed the game of the music industry. With the streaming, the numbers are like so important, like the streaming, the views, the likes, the followers. Like, who has power now? Is it the audience who have power, or is it like the boss of the industry who have the power? Because it seems like social media, it seems like the people are responsible for their click, the views, the attention that they're giving to the artists.
Social media to me is a double-edged sword because when it first came out, it opened up a whole world of people having the ability to connect to each other. I think what we've seen in the last few years is now that so many people are on a couple different platforms, now those people can be controlled as well. Meaning those platforms are censoring what they want to censor, they want to put on what they want to put on, they want to promote what they want to promote. And I feel like that's a negative. Like people have to step off those platforms and be willing to explore beyond the internet and pass on information beyond that. So when you ask me about social media, I think on one level, the idea of always validating your life by filming it is the wrong message. It's the wrong message. I don't want my kids on social media at all. No. When you go to a concert and the artist is here and all the fans are here and none of the fans are looking at the artist because they all want to take a selfie and they're looking that way so that their camera can get them with the artist, they're not even enjoying the moment of a concert. They're spending their time to validate to their social network that I'm at the concert instead of actually enjoying being in a concert. Go to any concert nowadays. The artist is here, everyone is looking in the opposite direction because they're filming themselves just to say, I'm here. Throw that away, enjoy it for yourself. You don't need to validate your life by your friends saying, oh, you're so cool. Enjoy it. If you love being in that music thing, let go of the phone and enjoy that moment and dance.
Do you think that the artists have pressure to use social media to, and then once you use it, then it's like it's an everyday thing, you know what I mean? You have to share, you have to be relevant all the time, you have to be in the moment, you think, and Rohff has a problem with this, again, because of his humility, I guess, or whatever. So, how can you manage to be Rohff and in the social media world? Like you.
I think you got to put on your hat. When you're an artist, it comes with a whole bunch of things that an artist, it's an industry, it's a music industry. Rohff is in it not only to get a message across, but he's also in it to sell records and make a living. And he does it, and he's made a career out of it. So there's certain things that go with that territory if your aim is to sell records. So social media is a tool. Before social media was being in a magazine, you'd have to go to the photo shoot, you'd have to do interviews. You may not like doing it all day, but that's part of it. So is it a part of an artist to do social media nowadays? Yeah, like if you want to be as successful, if you want to make the same kind of ends, then you have to adapt and be willing to change. Now, if you want to be that guy that just shows up at an open mic at a poetry reading just to get your message across and you're not worried about selling records or promoting yourself, you could be that. But you just got to recognize that that's what you are.
And you, what's your relationship with social media?
My relationship with social media is because a lot of people in the industry are connected in it, I use it as a way of promoting what my last video was so people could see it. If it wasn't for work relation, I would actually probably not be on social media just because it's time consuming. I've been in modes where it becomes addicting. Like you just feel like, okay, I'm sitting down, let me pick up my phone. Like you can't have a moment without checking. So it's an addiction, and I think like it can be a negative addiction, especially if it's if our kids get used to it, boom, boom, let me check, always, every day. When I was a kid, we went to the basketball court. We played. Like, we actually lived life. We didn't live it in a phone. And I think that there's some texture and value to that. And so I would push kids to try to push away from that as much as possible. Learn your technology, learn your tools, but don't let it consume you.
I want to come back to one thing that we just passed quickly. It's the video "Welcome to My Hood." It's in France, so at that time I remember Rohff was proud and happy just to share that the fact that he's with Khaled and think there's T-Pain, Rick Ross. He was happy, and it was backfired him, and everybody was acting like, oh, you're just looking for fame there, and just little dog of this American artist. Can you tell me what happened and how he ended up into this music video?
Yeah, well, first of all, if anyone's talking negative about you, that means you're doing something. So I would take that as a compliment. The moment there's haters, that means you're doing something right, because there's always going to be haters. In regards to that music video, the week I met Rohff, I was prepping that video, and I loved his vibe so much, and I started getting into what he's doing in France, and I was like, man, he's perfect to be in this video. Like, he represents everything with every cameo we're putting in this music video. So I invited him to the set, I introduced him to Khaled, and I think they actually did something, after that, introduced him to all the artists that I knew that he might not have known. Some of them already knew him as well. And so for me, it was a total match. Like, he needed to be in that music video. Even though he's not from Miami, he shares that sentiment universally. And so there's hoods in every city. And I know Rohff represents the spirit of hip-hop and what hip-hop meant that day in that music video. So I asked him to be in it.
And he accepted it?
Yeah, Rohff is real gracious, where he's like, he doesn't want to step on anyone's turf if he's not really invited. And I told him, no. I already told Khaled that we're going to have you. He was like, gave me the authority, like, let's go. You're welcome. We want you to be a part of it. This is not like any gimmick, or we're putting you out in this for some sort of fame or some sort of notoriety. Like, this is like, yo, you're hanging with me today. You're a hip hop artist. This is the biggest hip hop record in America right now. You need to be up in this. And that's how we did it. We rocked out.
That was a good result.
That video was huge, #1.
I remember this one too. It's
Yeah.
insane. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You're an amazing director, though.
Respect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really, really. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, man. I'll do anything for Rohff.
Yeah, really. That's what he said too. That's
Yeah.
what he said actually. Like really, really, he loved you. Like he really think there's something special. You know what I mean? It's like we connected in some way. Like he really think that there's something special between you and him. Though.
Nah, there really is. Like, that's my brother. Maybe he wasn't in this lifetime biological. Somewhere in the last 5,000 years, maybe he was in Egypt or something. We were brothers, and that's my kin folk right there. So big up to Rohff every time.
Thank you so
You
much.
done know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. thank
All
you.
right. Cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure,
I
man.
appreciate
That was
it.
fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.